somewhere along a narrow, cobbled street in Paris, before the rest of the city has even thought about waking. There is a small bakery with a single warm light glowing behind its window, and the soft, quiet smell of fresh bread drifting out into the cool morning air. The street outside is empty and hushed, the sky still holding on to the last soft grey of night, and inside, everything moves slowly, gently, the way morning always should. Tonight you are there, not as a visitor passing through, but as someone allowed simply to sit, quietly, and watch the morning unfold at its own unhurried pace. Let yourself settle into this feeling now. There is nothing you need to do, and nowhere else you need to be. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. Let your mind follow this small warm window glowing quietly on an empty street into the calm and simple morning waiting on the other side of the glass. Take a slow breath in and let it out even more slowly. Feel your body grow heavy and warm, settling further into wherever you are resting right now, whether that is a bed, a couch, or a soft nest of blankets pulled up around you. There is nothing urgent happening in this bakery tonight, and there never will be. Everything here moves at the pace of rising dough and cooling loaves, unhurried, patient, familiar. If it helps, dim the light beside you now, or simply let your eyes fall closed. Let my voice become like the low murmur of a kitchen 3 rooms away, something you can follow loosely without ever needing to catch every word. You will not miss anything important tonight. This bakery will still be here, warm and quiet, whenever your attention drifts back to it, and it will still be here even after your attention drifts away completely, into sleep. There is no clock you need to watch here, no schedule you need to keep. The only rhythm that matters tonight is the slow rise of dough beneath a warm cloth, and the low, patient hum of an oven that has already been burning quietly for hours before the rest of the city stirs. You may drift towards sleep at any point in what follows, and it will not matter in the least. The bakery will keep unfolding at its own gentle pace, loaf by loaf, cup by cup, whether your mind is there to notice or has already slipped quietly away into rest. Perhaps you have visited a place like this before, some quiet morning in some quiet corner of the world, a small room warmed by an oven and filled with the smell of something rising slowly toward ready. Or perhaps this is simply a place your mind is visiting for the very first time, built now, in this moment, entirely for you, entirely for this purpose, so that you might have somewhere soft and warm to rest your thoughts as your body settles gently towards sleep. Either way, it does not matter. Both are equally real tonight, and both will hold you just as gently. So let us step inside together now, gently, the way morning light slips quietly beneath a closed door. The bakery sits on a narrow street lined with pale stone buildings, their shutters still closed, their windows still dark, except for this one soft glow spilling out onto the cobblestones below. Above the door, a small hand-painted sign creaks faintly in the early morning air, though there is barely any wind to move it, only the smallest whisper of a breeze finding its way down the quiet street. The glass of the front window has fogged slightly at its edges, warmed from within, and through it you can see golden light, low and soft, filling the little room beyond. Inside, the air is warm and thick with the smell of fresh bread, the deep, comforting scent of baked crust and warm flour, mixed faintly with the sweetness of butter and the low, earthy smell of yeast, working quietly beneath cloths in the back. It is the kind of smell that settles into your chest and makes your whole body feel a little heavier, a little calmer, the way the smell of a familiar kitchen always does. Beneath it, faintly, there is the smell of coffee beginning to brew, dark and warm, rising slowly from a small pot near the counter. The walls of the bakery are the color of pale butter, softened further by years of gentle steam and warmth, and along one wall, wide wooden shelves hold rows of baskets lined with soft cloth, waiting patiently for the morning's bread. A few loaves rest there already, their crusts a deep golden brown, still faintly warm, releasing the smallest curls of steam into the quiet air. The counter is old wood, smoothed pale by years of hands resting there, and behind it, glass cases wait empty still, ready to be filled slowly, unhurriedly, over the next quiet hour. The floor is old tile, worn soft at its edges, patterned in faded blue and white, and it creaks gently in one particular spot near the oven, a small, familiar sound that has creaked in exactly the same way for longer than anyone working here can remember. Along the back wall, a large stone oven glows faintly orange around its edges, warm and steady, its heat spreading slowly through the room like a low, patient hum you can feel more than hear. If you were to rest your hand against the wall nearest the oven, you would feel that same warmth held gently there, patient and low, the way warmth lingers in a stone hearth long after the fire itself has settled. Above the counter, a row of small brass hooks holds folded aprons pale with flour dust, each one worn soft by years of gentle use. A single wooden spoon rests beside a large ceramic bowl, its handle smoothed by countless slow turns of dough, and beside that, a small tin of salt sits with its lid slightly open, catching the faintest gleam of the kitchen light. Nothing in this room is new. Everything has been touched and warmed and used gently, again and again, until it has taken on the soft, worn comfort of something truly familiar. Outside the window, the sky continues its slow shift from deep grey toward the faintest blue, though dawn is still some time away. A single lamppost glows on the corner, its light soft and yellow, catching faintly on the damp stones of the empty street. Somewhere far off, a delivery cart rolls slowly over cobblestones, its wheels creaking in an unhurried rhythm, fading gradually into silence as it moves further away. A cat crosses the street once, unhurried, pausing briefly beneath the lamppost before continuing on into a narrow alley, and then the street is empty again, quiet and still and waiting. Somewhere above the bakery, a single window opens softly, just a crack, and the faint sound of someone moving quietly through their morning routine drifts down for a moment before fading, again into silence. The whole street seems to hold its breath in this hour, caught in that soft, grey space between night and morning, where nothing needs to happen quickly, where everyone and everything is simply easing slowly into the day ahead. Near the back of the kitchen, a tall wooden rack holds long wicker baskets lined with linen, each one dusted lightly with flour, waiting to cradle the next batch of dough once it has finished its slow, patient rise. A single small window near the ceiling lets in the faintest hint of outside air, cool and clean, mixing gently with the warmth of the kitchen below, so that the room never grows too heavy, only pleasantly close, like the air inside a favorite sweater. On a low shelf near the oven, a row of glass jars holds flour and sugar and salt, each one labeled in careful, faded handwriting, each one exactly where it has always been. The oven itself is old, built from thick stone blocks that have held their heat faithfully for an hour, longer than the bakery has had its current name painted above the door. Its firebox glows low and steady, tended only occasionally, needing little encouragement to keep its patient warmth spreading evenly through the brick. A small brass door on its front catches the glow from within and turns it into the faintest golden shimmer, flickering gently whenever the air inside the room shifts, however slightly. Beside the front window, a narrow shelf holds a small vase with a few sprigs of dried lavender, their pale purple colour softened by years of gentle light, adding the faintest sweet note to the night air whenever a breeze from the opening door passes near them. A folded newspaper rests on the small table nearest the window, left there from the day before, unread, simply part of the quiet furniture of the room, waiting patiently for someone to notice it, or not, it hardly matters which. Across the narrow street, the buildings lean gently toward one another, the way old friends lean when they are tired, their pale stone facades softened by decades of rain and sun, their shutters painted in muted greens and blues that have faded gracefully over many years, into something even softer than their original color. A single iron balcony juts out above a closed flower shop, its railing dusted faintly with the night's cool moisture, empty now but for a single terracotta pot holding a small, sleeping herb plant, waiting patiently for the sun to properly rise. Further down the street, a fountain sits quiet and still in a small square, its water moving only faintly, a low, steady trickle that adds its own soft note to the hush of early morning. No one is there to watch it yet. It simply continues on its own patient rhythm, the same trickle it has offered every morning for longer than anyone walking past could easily guess, indifferent to whether anyone notices, content simply to keep moving, slow and quiet, the way water always does when it is in no hurry to get anywhere at all. Back inside the bakery, the warmth continues to gather in every corner, held gently by the old stone walls, by the low wooden beams crossing the ceiling, by the steady breath of the oven at the back of the room. The whole space feels less like a shop and more like the inside of a favorite coat, worn soft, familiar, holding its warmth close and offering it freely to anyone who steps inside from the cool morning air. If you were to stand quietly in the doorway just now, you would notice how the sounds of the room layer gently over one another. The low crackle of the oven's fire, the faint hiss of the kettle beginning to warm, the soft scrape of a wooden spoon against a ceramic bowl, each sound settling into the next without ever rising above a comfortable hush. Even the silence between these sounds feels warm here, thick with the smell of flour and butter, patient and unhurried, exactly the kind of silence that invites you to stay a little longer than you meant to. Along the windowsill, a thin line of condensation traces the shape of the cool glass meeting the warm room air, and if you watched closely enough, you might see one small drop finally gather enough weight to slide slowly downward, leaving the faintest clear line behind it, disappearing quietly into the old wooden frame below. Nothing about this moment asks to be noticed. It simply happens, softly, the way small things happen in rooms where no one is in any hurry at all. Inside, everything continues at its own slow pace. Dough rests beneath soft cloths, rising gently in the warmth. A kettle murmurs quietly on a back burner. The oven breathes its low, steady heat into the room, and the whole bakery seems to exist in this same patient rhythm, holding still, holding warm, waiting gently for the rest of the city to wake. At the counter, a woman moves slowly and quietly through her morning routine, her hands dusted lightly with flour, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. She has done this so many mornings that her movements have become soft and automatic, unhurried, the kind of practiced ease that comes only from years of repeating the same gentle motions. She lifts a tray of pale, unbaked rolls, checking them with a light touch, and slides them into the warm oven with a soft, careful motion, closing the door with the gentlest click, the kind of small, precise motion she could likely perform with her eyes closed after so many years of quiet practice. She moves to the counter next, wiping it slowly with a damp cloth, though it hardly needs cleaning, simply because the motion itself is part of her morning, part of the quiet ritual that carries her gently from darkness into daylight. She glances toward the window, watching the sky continue its slow shift toward pale blue, and allows herself a small, contented breath, the kind of breath that comes only when a person feels completely at ease with exactly where they are. She hums very softly to herself as she works, a tune with no particular name, one that seems to rise and fall along with the gentle rhythm of her hands, drifting through the warm kitchen air the way steam drifts from a freshly poured cup. It is not a song meant to be heard by anyone else, only a small, private companion to her solitary hour, the kind of quiet humming that fills a room without ever disturbing it. Beside her, a small radio sits dark and silent on a shelf, unused this early, its presence simply a promise of the soft music that will drift through the bakery a little later in the morning, once the sun has properly risen and the street outside has begun to stir. The bell above the door gives the faintest, softest chime, and an old man steps inside, wrapped in a heavy grey coat, his hands tucked into his pockets, his cheeks faintly pink from the cool morning air. He does not need to say much. He simply nods, and the baker nods back, already reaching for a small paper bag and a single warm croissant from beneath a cloth near the oven. Their exchange is brief and unhurried, only a few soft words about the cold morning, about how the bread smells particularly good today, about nothing important at all, only the comfortable, familiar sound of two people who have shared this same quiet moment many mornings before, neither one needing to fill the silence that follows with anything more. Cold again this morning, the old man says softly, and the baker only smiles and answers just as softly, "It always is, this time of year." And that is the whole of their conversation, simple, warm, unhurried, needing nothing more than that to feel complete. He settles at the small table near the window, unwrapping his croissant slowly, releasing a soft curl of steam into the morning light, and looks out at the street, content simply to sit there, warm and quiet and unhurried. The baker returns to her counter, moving a tray of bread from the back shelf to the front display, each loaf settled gently into place, the golden crusts catching the low kitchen light. She pauses there a moment, resting both hands lightly on the counter's smooth edge, simply breathing in the warm, familiar air of her own small kitchen, content, unhurried, entirely at home in this quiet hour before the rest of the world arrives. A few minutes later, the bell chimes again, softer this time, and a young woman steps in, her coat still damp from the morning air, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She glances first toward the warm glow of the display case, then toward the small tables near the window, taking a moment simply to arrive in the room before deciding where to settle. She smiles faintly at the old man near the window, a small nod of quiet recognition, the kind two familiar strangers share without needing words. She orders quietly a small loaf of bread and a coffee, and while she waits, she watches the baker work, her hands sure and slow, folding a new batch of dough with practiced ease, the motion almost like a slow, repeating dance. "You're here early again," the baker says gently, not looking up from her folding, and the young woman laughs softly, just a breath of sound, and answers, "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd rather be somewhere warm." The baker only nods at that, as if it is the most reasonable thing in the world, and continues her slow folding, over and under, the dough yielding softly beneath her patient hands. The young woman settles near the window as well, though at a small separate table, and wraps both hands around her warming coffee cup, watching the steam rise in soft, unhurried curls. Outside, the sky has lightened by the smallest degree, the deep grey easing very slowly towards something paler, something closer to blue, though the lamppost on the corner still glows steadily, unaware that its light will soon no longer be needed. Later still, a father arrives with his small daughter, her hand tucked warmly inside his, her eyes still heavy with sleep, though clearly delighted by the smell filling the little room. He orders 2 pains au chocolat, one for each of them, and lifts her gently so she can peer over the chons to the trays of pastries resting beneath the glass. She points quietly at one, then another, entirely serious about her choice, and the baker laughs softly, a warm, easy sound, and tells her she has chosen very well indeed. The father thanks the baker quietly, tucking the small paper bag beneath his arm, and the two of them step back out into the street, already unwrapping their pastries before the door has even fully closed behind them. The baker watches them go for a moment through the window, a small, contented smile settling over her face, and then she returns to her work table, brushing a light layer of flour from her hands before reaching for the next portion of dough, waiting patiently beneath its cloth. He works it slowly, the same familiar folding motion, over and under, her thoughts settling into the same unhurried quiet that seems to fill every corner of the room around her. The older woman in the corner finishes her tea slowly, setting the small cup back onto its saucer with the softest click, and gathers her shawl a little closer around her shoulders. She does not rise right away. She simply sits a while longer, watching the light through the window shift by degrees, content to let the morning move at whatever pace it wishes, needing nothing more from it than this. Eventually she rises, slow and careful, and pauses by the counter to exchange a few final soft words with the baker, something about the weather turning colder, something about how the bread today smells especially of warm honey, and then she steps out into the brightening street, the bell above the door giving its gentle, familiar chime behind her. A younger couple steps in not long after, their coats still buttoned against the cold, their voices low and easy, clearly still half caught in the comfortable quiet of early morning. They order 2 coffees and a single pastry to share, and while they wait, they stand close together near the window, watching the street outside slowly filling with the first few passers-by, a man walking a small dog, a cyclist gliding easily over the cobblestones, a shopkeeper across the street unlocking her own front door for the day. The couple does not speak much either, content simply to stand together in the warmth, waiting patiently for their order, in no hurry at all to be anywhere else. The baker moves easily between each small task, sliding a fresh tray into the oven, wrapping a loaf in soft paper, pouring coffee slowly so the steam rises in one long, unbroken curl. Her rhythm never quickens, never falters, simply continues, the same steady, familiar motion she has carried through countless mornings just like this one. Somewhere beneath her calm, unhurried hands, the whole bakery seems to breathe along with her. Each small task a slow exhale, each pause between them a slow, patient inhale. A quiet delivery arrives at the back door, crates of fresh butter and a sack of flour set down gently by a young man who barely says a word beyond a soft good morning, exchanging a brief nod with the baker before disappearing again into the last of the early morning dark. She thanks him softly, already turning to set the butter into the cool pantry, moving the flour sack near the work table where it will be needed again soon. Her steps unhurried, her focus calm and entirely present in this one small task, before moving quietly to the next. Somewhere in the back room, a second baker, younger, quieter, works at his own small table, shaping a long batch of dough into loaves with slow, careful hands, humming faintly under his breath, a different tune from the one the baker at the front hums, though somehow the 2 melodies drift together in the warm air, without ever clashing, blending instead into something soft and formless, and entirely pleasant. The oven ticks softly as it holds its heat. The kettle murmurs on, low and steady. Outside, the sky continues its unhurried shift toward morning, and inside, the small bakery holds its warm, familiar rhythm, unbothered by anything beyond its own gentle repetition of bread and coffee and quiet conversation and soft golden light. A third customer arrives not long after, an older woman with a soft wool shawl draped over her shoulders, her silver hair pinned neatly back, her steps slow and careful on the worn tile floor. She greets the baker with a small, familiar smile and orders her usual, a plain roll and a small pot of tea, and settles at a corner table with the quiet contentment of someone who has done exactly this, in exactly this place, more times than she could ever hope to count. She does not speak much, only offers a soft good morning to the old man by the window and a gentle nod to the young woman nearby, and then she simply sits, watching the room settle around her, patient and warm and unhurried. The bread rises and the oven warms and the kettle murmurs on, and the morning continues, slow and unhurried. The bread rises and the baker waits, patient and calm, and the oven warms a little more, and the morning continues on, exactly as it always has. The bread rises, the oven warms, the kettle murmurs low and steady, and outside the sky lightens by the smallest degree, slow and slower and slower still. The bell above the door chimes again, softly, and another quiet customer steps inside, unwinding a scarf, murmuring a gentle greeting, settling into the same familiar rhythm the whole bakery seems to move by. Cups are filled slowly, bread is wrapped gently in soft paper, coins are exchanged quietly, without hurry, and small, warm conversations drift through the room like steam rising from a cup, soft and brief and comforting. The baker moves from oven to counter, counter to shelf, shelf to oven again, the same slow, Familiar circuits she has walked countless mornings before. Her hands sure, her pace even, her mind calm and settled into the simple rhythm of her work. The old man by the window finishes his croissant slowly, brushing a few crumbs gently from his coat, and lingers there a while longer, watching the street outside grow paler, softer, closer to morning. The young woman with the damp coat sits now too, her coffee cup warm between her hands, steam curling softly upward, and she watches it drift and fade, the same slow motion repeating gently above her cup. The older woman in the corner sips her tea slowly, her eyes half closed, content simply to let the warmth settle through her before she says anything at all. The bread rises, and the oven warms, and the kettle murmurs on. The bell chimes softly, and another customer steps in, and the same warm rhythm folds them gently into its rest. A young man in a soft grey scarf orders a coffee to carry with him, though even he lingers a moment longer than he needs to, drawn in by the warmth, by the smell of fresh bread, by the unhurried ease that seems to fill every corner of the small room. Outside, the lamppost glow softens as the sky continues to lighten, slow and steady, the faintest blue easing gently into pale grey, the pale grey easing gently into something softer still. A second delivery cart rolls past, slower than the first, its wheels creaking the same unhurried rhythm, and somewhere further down the street a shutter creaks open, then another, the city beginning to stir in its own slow time. Inside, the bakery holds its own quiet weather, warm and golden, unaffected by anything beyond its gentle repetition of bread and coffee, and soft familiar voices drifting low across the room. The baker slides another tray from the oven, the smell of fresh bread deepening for a moment before settling back into its steady, familiar hush. She sets the tray on the counter to cool, the golden crusts glowing gently, and turns back toward her work table, already reaching for the next portion of dough waiting beneath its cloth. The old man rises slowly from his table, gathering his coat a little closer, and offers a quiet farewell to the room, a small nod to the baker, a gentle word to the young woman nearby. "Until tomorrow," he says softly, and the baker answers just as softly, "Until tomorrow," and the bell above the door chimes gently once more as he steps back out into the brightening street. A pair of elderly friends shuffle in together, arm in arm, their laughter soft and low as they settle at the table nearest the counter, already deep in some quiet, familiar conversation that clearly needs no ending and no real beginning either, only this comfortable middle they have shared for years. They order the same thing they always order, 2 small coffees and a single shared roll, and the baker prepares it without needing to ask, already knowing exactly how they like it, exactly how much sugar, exactly how warm the milk should be. The bread rises, and the oven warms, and the kettle murmurs on. The 2 friends talk quietly about nothing in particular, about a garden one of them is tending, about a grandchild's recent visit, about the particular blue of the sky this time of year, their words drifting through the room as softly as the steam rising from their cups. Neither of them seems to need the other to respond quickly, or at all sometimes, content simply to let their words rest gently in the warm air between them. Near the window, a small house cat that belongs to no one in particular slips in through the door, left briefly open, curling itself into a patch of soft morning light without asking anyone's permission, and no one minds at all. The baker glances over once, smiles faintly, and sets down a small dish of water near the corner without a word, as though this too is simply part of the morning's familiar rhythm, expected, welcome, unhurried. Another tray emerges from the oven, and another after that, each one filling the room a little more with the warm smell of fresh crust, and each time the baker sets it gently on the cooling rack, and each time the golden light catches the curls of rising steam in exactly the same soft way. A cyclist passes the window once, and then a second, and then the street grows quiet again, holding its own patient rhythm between one small burst of movement and the next. Outside, a street sweeper moves slowly along the far end of the block, his broom sweeping in long, unhurried strokes, the soft scrape of bristles against stone barely reaching the bakery's warm interior. He pauses once to glance toward the glowing window, offers the faintest nod to no one in particular, and continues on his slow way, disappearing gradually around the corner. The lamppost on the corner flickers once, then steadies again, its glow growing less necessary with every passing minute as the sky continues its patient climb toward morning. A church bell somewhere in the distance rings out once, low and soft, its single note rolling gently over the rooftops before fading into the morning hush, unhurried, unbothered by anything beyond its own slow, resonant tone. No one in the bakery looks up. It is simply part of the morning's quiet architecture, familiar and expected, another gentle marker of time passing at exactly the pace it always has. The young man with the gray scarf finally gathers his coffee to go, wrapping both hands around the warm cup before stepping toward the door, pausing there just a moment longer to glance back at the golden light filling the little room behind him, the way anyone might pause a moment longer in a place that has made them feel entirely at ease. The bell chimes softly as he steps out, and the door falls closed again gently behind him, and the room settles back into its familiar quiet. The bread rises, and the oven warms, and the kettle murmurs on, and morning continues, slow and steady and endlessly unhurried, the way it always has, the way it always will, here in this small, warm bakery on a quiet street in Paris. The morning has grown quieter now, softer, slower, fewer footsteps pass along the street outside. The baker rests for a moment, leaning gently against the counter, her hands finally still. The oven's heat has settled into a low, steady hum. The kettle has gone quiet, its work finished for now. The old man's chair sits empty by the window, though its warmth seems to linger there a while longer. The young woman holds her coffee gently, no longer stirring it. The older woman in the corner has closed her eyes, her tea cooling slowly before her. Steam rises slowly from the remaining cups, then fades, then rises again, softer still. The bell above the door does not chime for a while. The street outside rests in pale, quiet light. The bread in the display case sits golden and still, no longer needing tending. The baker's breathing slows to match the quiet room around her. In, a long, soft pause. Out, an even longer pause after that. The whole bakery settles gently into its stillest hour, warm and quiet and unhurried. The bakery is almost silent now. Only the faintest hush of warm air remains, drifting gently from the oven, so soft it could almost be mistaken for nothing at all. The baker rests quietly behind her counter, her hands finally at ease, her gaze